"Tell you what's bothering me the most so far," Sampson said as we toured the military base on foot. "Same thing that's bothering me, probably," I huffed. "We found out about Ronald Hodge and the Hertz car in about a day. What's wrong with the local police and the Army investigations? You starting to believe Ellis Cooper is innocent?" I didn't answer Sampson, but our murder investigation was definitely disturbing in an unusual way. It was going too well. We were learning things that the Fayetteville police didn't seem to know. And why hadn't Army CID done a better job with the case? Cooper was one of their own, wasn't he? When I got back to my room after the run, the phone was ringing. I wondered who'd be calling this early. Had to be Nana and the kids. It was just past 7. I answered in the slightly goofy Damon Wayans voice I sometimes use around the kids. "Yellow? Who's calling me so early in the morning? Who's waking me up? You have some nerve." Then I heard a woman's voice. Unfamiliar, with a heavy southern accent. "Is this Detective Cross?" I quickly changed my tone and hoped she didn't hang up. "Yes, it is. Who's this?" "I'd rather not say. Just listen, please. This is hard for me to tell you or anyone else." "I'm listening. Go ahead." I heard a deep sigh before she spoke again. "I was with Ellis Cooper on the night of the 3 terrible murders. We were together when the murders took place. We were intimate. That's all I can say for now." I could tell that the caller was frightened, maybe close to panic. I had to keep her on the line if I could. "Wait a minute, please. You could have helped Sergeant Cooper at the trial. You can still help him. You could prevent his execution." "No, I can't say any more than I already have. I'm married to someone on the base. I won't destroy my family. I just can't. I'm sorry." "Why didn't you tell the police in town or CID? Why didn't Cooper tell us? Please, stay on the line. Stay with me." The woman moaned softly. "I called Captain Jacobs. I told him. He did nothing with the information, with the truth. I hope you do something. Ellis Cooper didn't kill those 3 women. I didn't believe my testimony would be enough to save him, and I'm afraid of the consequences." "What consequences? Think about the consequences for Sergeant Cooper. He's going to be executed." The woman hung up. I couldn't tell much about her, but I was sure she was sobbing. I stood there staring at the phone receiver, not quite believing what I'd just heard. I had just talked to Ellis Cooper's alibi, and now she was gone. Chapter 17. About 5 o'clock, Sampson and I received terrifically good news. The commanding officer at Bragg was willing to see us at his house on the base. We were to be there at 7:30 sharp. General Stephen Bowen would give us 10 minutes to share the information we had about the murder case. In the meantime, Sampson got through to Sergeant Cooper at Central Prison. He denied that he had been with a woman that night. What was worse, Sampson said that Cooper wasn't very convincing. But why would he hold back the truth from us? It didn't make sense. General Bowen's quarters looked to be from the 20s or 30s, a stucco house with a Spanish tile roof. Up on the 2nd floor there was a sun porch with glass on 3 sides, probably the master suite. A man was watching from up there as we parked in the semicircular driveway. General Bowen himself? We were met at the front door by an officer aide who identified himself as Captain Rizzo. The general staff included an officer aide, an enlisted aide who was part of the general's security but also worked as the cook, and a driver who was also security. We stepped into a large foyer with sitting rooms on either side. The decor was eclectic and probably reflected the general's career around the world. I noticed a beautiful carved cabinet that looked German, a painted screen showing rolling hills and cherry trees from Japan, and an antique sideboard that suggested a possible posting in New England. Captain Rizzo showed us into a small den where General Stephen Bowen was already waiting for us. He was in uniform. The aide leaned into me. "I'll return in exactly 10 minutes. The general wants to talk to you alone." "Please sit down," said Bowen. He was tall and solidly built, probably in his mid-50s. He tented his fingers on top of a well-worn desk that looked as if it had been with him for most of his career. I understand that you've come down here to try and reopen the Cooper murder case. Why do you think we should reconsider the case? And Cooper's death sentence?" As concisely as I could, I told the General what we had already found out, and also our reactions to the evidence as homicide detectives. He was a practiced listener who punctuated what I had to say by uttering, "Interesting," several times. He seemed open to other points of view and eager for new information. For the moment, I was hopeful. When I stopped, he asked, "Is there anything else either of you wants to add? This is the time for it." Sampson seemed unusually quiet and reserved in the General's presence. "I'm not going to get into my personal feelings for Sergeant Cooper," he finally spoke. "But as a detective, I find it impossible to believe that he'd bring the murder weapon plus several incriminating photographs back to his house." Surprisingly, General Bowen nodded agreement. "I do too," he said. "But that's what he did. I don't understand why either, but then again I don't understand how a man could willfully murder 3 women as he most definitely did. It was the worst peacetime violence I've seen in my career, and gentlemen, I've seen some bad business." The General leaned forward across his desk. His eyes narrowed and his jaw tensed. "Let me tell you something about this murder case that I haven't shared with anyone else. No one. This is just for the 2 of you. When Sergeant Cooper is executed at Central Prison by the state of North Carolina, I will be there with the families of those murdered women. I'm looking forward to the lethal injection. What that animal did revolts and disgusts me. Your 10 minutes are up. Now get the hell out of here. Get the fuck out of my sight." His aide, Captain Rizzo, was already back at the door. Chapter 18.
The 3 blind mice were in Fayetteville again, headed toward Fort Bragg for the first time in several months. Thomas Starkey, Brownlee Harris, and Warren Griffin were admitted through the security gates on All-American Freeway. No problem. They had official business on post. They had an appointment. The 3 men were unusually quiet as Starkey drove the dark blue Suburban across the base. They hadn't been at Bragg since the murders of the 3 women. Not that the place had changed one iota. Change happened very slowly in the military. "This is a trip I personally could do without," Brownlee Harris contributed from the back seat of the Suburban. "It's not a problem," said Starkey, taking control as he always did. "We have a legitimate reason to be here. Be a mistake if we stop showing our faces at Bragg. Don't disappoint me." "I hear you," said Harris. "I still don't like being back at the scene of the crime." He decided that things needed some lightening up. "Y'all hear the differential theory of the U.S. Armed Forces, the so-called snake model?" he asked. "Haven't heard that one, Brownie," said Griffin, who also rolled his eyes. He knew a joke was coming, probably a bad one. "Army infantry comes in after the snake. Snake smells them, leaves the area unharmed. Aviation comes next, has global positioning satellite coordinates to the snake, still can't find the snake, returns to base for refuel, crew rests, and manicures. Field artillery comes, attacks the snake with massive time-on-target barrage with 3 artillery battalions in support, kills several hundred civilians as unavoidable collateral damage. All participants, including cooks, mechanics, and clerks, are awarded silver stars." "What about us Rangers?" asked Griffin, playing the straight man. Harris grinned. "Single Ranger comes in, plays with the snake, then eats it." Starkey snorted out a laugh. Then he turned off Armistead Street into the lot for the Corps headquarters. "Remember, this is just business. Conduct yourselves accordingly, gentlemen." Griffin and Harris barked, "Yes, sir." The 3 of them gathered their briefcases, put on lightweight suit jackets, and tightened their neckties. They were the senior sales team for Heckler & Koch, and they were at Bragg to promote the sale of guns to the Army. In particular, they were trying to build common interest in the gun manufacturer's PDW, which weighed just over 2 pounds, fully loaded, and could, quote, defeat all known standard-issue military body armor, unquote. "Hell of a weapon," Thomas Starkey liked to say during his sales pitch. "If we'd had it in Nam, we would have won the war."
Chapter 19.
The meeting went as well as any of them could have hoped. The three salesmen left the Army Corps offices at a little past 8 that night with assurances of support for the personal defense weapon. Thomas Starkey had also demonstrated the latest version of the MP5 submachine gun and talked knowledgeably and enthusiastically about his company's fabrication system, which made its gun parts 99.9% interchangeable. "Let's get some cold beers and thick steaks," Starkey said. "See if we can get in a little trouble in Fayetteville or maybe some other town down the line. That's an order, gentlemen." "I'm up for that," said Harris. "It's been a good day, hasn't it? Let's see if we can spoil it." By the time they left Fort Bragg, darkness had fallen. They knew Fayetteville, not only from business trips, but from when they'd been stationed at Bragg. It was only 4 years since the three of them had left the Army, where they'd been Rangers: Colonel Starkey, Captain Harris, Master Sergeant Griffin. 75th Ranger Regiment, 3rd Battalion, originally out of Fort Benning, Georgia. They were just entering town when they saw a couple of hookers loitering on a dark street corner. In the bad old days, Hayes Street in town had block after block of rough bars and strip joints. It used to be known as Fayette-Nam. No more, though. The locals were trying to gentrify the downtown area. A billboard put up by the Chamber of Commerce read, "Metro living at a southern pace." Made you want to throw up. Warren Griffin leaned out the side window of the Suburban. "I love you, and especially you. Stop the car this minute. Oh, God, please stop the vehicle. I love you, darling. I'll be back," he called to the two girls. "I'm Vanessa," one of them called. She's a real cutie, too. Starkey laughed, but he drove on until they reached the pump, which had been there for at least 20 years. They strolled inside to eat and party. Why work if you couldn't get a reward? Why feel the pain unless you got some gain? During the next few hours they drank too many beers, ate 24-ounce steaks with fried onions and mushrooms slathered on top, smoked cigars, and told their best war stories and jokes. Even the waitresses and bartenders got into the act some. Everybody liked Thomas Starkey, unless you happened to get on his bad side. They were leaving Fayetteville about midnight when Starkey pulled the Suburban over to the curb. "Time for a live fire exercise," he said to Griffin and Harris. They knew what that meant. Harris just smiled, but Griffin let out a whoop. "Whoo, let the war games begin." Starkey leaned out his window and talked to one of the girls loitering on Hayes Street. She was a tall, rail-thin blonde, wobbling slightly on silver platform heels. She had a little pouty mouth, but it disappeared when she flashed them her best $100 smile. "You are a very beautiful lady," Starkey said. "Listen, we're heading over to our suite at the Radisson. You be interested in 3 big tips instead of just one? We kind of like to party together. It'll be good, clean fun." Starkey could be charming and also respectful. He had an easy smile, so the blonde hooker got into the Suburban's back seat beside Griffin. "You all promised to be good boys," she said, and smiled that wonderful smile of hers again. "Promise," the three of them chorused. "We'll be good boys." She was good with men, knew how to handle them, especially soldiers from Fort Bragg, who were usually decent enough guys. Once upon a time she'd been an Army brat herself. Not so long ago. She was 19. "What's your name, sweetie?" asked Griffin. "I like you already." "It's Vanessa," said the girl, giving her made-up street handle. "What's yours?" Griffin laughed out loud. "Why, it's Warren." "Nice to make your acquaintance, Vanessa. Pretty name for a pretty lady." They rode out of town in the direction of I-95. Starkey suddenly pulled the Suburban over after a mile or so and shouted, "Pit stop!" He let the Suburban roll until it was mostly hidden in a copse of evergreens and prickle bushes. "The Radisson's not far. Why don't you wait?" Vanessa asked. "You boys can hold it a little longer, can't you?" "This can't wait," said Griffin. Suddenly he had his pistol up tight against the girl's skull. From the front seat, Brownlee Harris had his gun aimed at her chest. "De Hai Thailand Dao!" Thomas Starkey screamed, his voice deep and scary. "Hands on your head." "Mein Gott nu, fin fukroy da!" "You're in serious trouble, bitch." Vanessa didn't understand a word, but she sure got the tone. Bad shit was going down, real bad shit. The girl's stomach dropped. Ordinarily, she wouldn't have gotten into a car with three guys, but the driver had seemed so nice.